Hi everyone, I'm Gauri Bhagwat. I'm second year PhD candidate for the Trifecta project at DH Lab. You met many of my colleagues recently. So today I'm going to present one of our recent work, which was published in LDK, Language Data and Knowledge Conference in September in Naples. As you can see from my slide, it's heavily food dominated. So that's my use case for Trifecta. It's food history. So let's start. It's delicious, I know. So I will start with a small but a very striking example. So when I was going through Dutch newspapers, I found that there were recipes where they use banana leaves interchangeably with aluminum foil. Now, you have to get it that banana plants are not really native to Netherlands at all. So how did this happen? And I understand that bananas are a result of colonial trade, but what happened that they became so integral part that they were being used interchangeably? And that obviously piqued my interest. And I also kept thinking about it. Okay, food practices are not static, they keep evolving based on the availability, war, economical things, but I want to study that. And that's what we did. So we studied various Dutch recipes from different points in history, from 1910 to 1995. And from that, we found a couple of very interesting results, which also which also point towards the changes in Dutch culinary trends. Our main two contributions are a structured data set, which is from Dutch historical cookbooks, and a diachronic analysis, which focuses on ingredient uses pattern, recipe complexity, and recipe categories in books. So what data we used? We obviously used cookbooks. These are from Delpher. So Delpher is a free online repository about printed digitized material in Netherlands, and it is run by the National Library of Netherlands. So we use the cookbooks from there. But what type of cookbooks? There are so many. So we focused only on the house school books, which are housekeeping schools. Why that? So in Netherlands, housekeeping schools were quite popular, and almost 25% of young women used to attend these schools. So these were not just training material. These books actually shaped how the cooking was done. So girls used to attend these schools to become an ideal wife or to get ready for households. So we can definitely say that these books did have an impact. Along with the books, we also looked at newspapers. So newspapers, this dataset was already curated for a paper historical recipe web. And so we used the dataset from the already published paper. Uh, this is one of my favorite headline, which says swallowed by cookbook. It was published in 1990 by a paper. And so the whole article talks about 10 most favorite book of cookbooks of author and recipes. But this also shows that how important cookbooks were for that time. People were using it, people were publishing and buying the cookbooks. So it it showed that okay, the sources we are using really affected the culture at that time. To give you a glimpse of how exactly recipes looks, so this is a simple recipe of Christmas dinner. It just has four menus. We can see a Santa and focus on the word simple here because this menu has just 50 plus ingredients. Very simple to do. And if I was given this recipe, just like Santa, I would have ended up eating the cookbook and not preparing it. But I'm safe to say we did not got swallowed by cookbooks. Instead, we had a total of 33,000 recipes curated in our dataset. And how did we do that? So for that, we followed a methodology, which is quite simple. We first started with the pre-processing, clean out the information we didn't need or was not focused for this research, and move ahead with the recipe extraction. This was done by a simple regex method. We got really good results, 98.5% of accuracy. The only issues we had were because of the OCR quality, as this is from 20th century. The OCR was not as good as for the contemporary ones, but still we had quite a good result. After getting the recipes, we moved forward with ingredient extraction. So for this, we used pre-existing lexicon, but also we enriched it using various seasonal ingredient lists that we found from multiple cookbooks. And but as we are talking about historical food items here, they have different spellings, they have different names. So we also use Dutch lexicon, which gives alternative spellings for the same ingredients. So after using all the different sources, we enrich the lexicon and use it to extract the ingredients. We ended up with more than 1800 unique ingredients, and after trying this method, we also tried using llms for doing the whole process, because we wanted to test how is the capabilities of llms to do that. I can say that we got really quite good result, but quite good result for historical document, also for a language which is not English. But LLM struggled a lot with abbreviations, especially for the quantities mentioned just before ingredients, and also with OCR errors. But we think that it's a promising avenue to look forward for a future research on this. So after having the whole thing ready, we had our data, ingredients. We were really curious to do some analysis. So the first thing that we did was ingredient usage pattern. I know it's a bit too crowded. Just bear with me for a minute. So when we looked at, so this is a heat map that shows frequency of ingredients that were mentioned in the recipes. These are the relative frequency here, from light yellow to dark red. They show the intensity from low to high frequency. The most common three ingredients were butter, egg, and sugar. And I would love to be in that era. And but I understand it's really difficult to read this. So let us focus on one of the example here. So the example here shows pepper. As we know, for especially for European market, pepper was a luxury item. It was extremely prized commodity. But something happened over a period of time. Now we use it, we throw it. People in past would have had heart attack by seeing how we use pepper, but things change, and you can actually see these changes computationally here, that you see a gradual increase in the frequency when the pepper is mentioned in recipes, and that was quite good to see. But then one of my favorite example is margarine. There is spike in use of margarine, mention of margarine only during post World War period, and this is something that made me really curious, that can there be a possibility of using ingredients as a marker towards historical or economical events that happened. And this shows that there can be a possibility. Obviously this is a preliminary experiment and exploration, so I won't say that this is the proof, but it shows a possibility. And looking at this, we were quite impressed, like, okay, we are finding something, so let's look at different angle of it. Just not just ingredient usage pattern like the frequency, but also as recipe as a whole. So if we look at recipe as a whole here, so so the first name, I actually like that name. So the worm, so worm Nachrexten. I'm horrible with Dutch pronunciations, but it actually literal translation is warm night food. So earlier they were quite popular. So the cookbooks from 1910s, 1920s, really popular. But then there is decline. The number of recipes mentioned in these categories really had a steep fall. But at the same time, cold desserts, people started loving it apparently, because the recipes were started increasing in cookbooks. Along with that, there were new categories that were mentioned. So rice tafel, so that is rice table, it's not a really recipe from Indonesia. It is something, an adaptation done in Netherlands from an Indonesian recipe. It also might reflect that peoples who were uh, traveling to like Indonesia for trade purposes, coming back and having their own interpretations. But such type of recipes and categories started emerging a lot in the later period, which shows that these cookbooks did adapt it to the changes, so they were quite relevant to the culture at that time. Also, raukos, so which is salad. So salad started showing a lot of growth. It was maybe towards healthy eating, and this actually was in line with the ingredient usage pattern, where the sugar showed a quite, not a quite, but a gradual decrease in mentioned in the recipes. It still stayed on top three. I won't say no, but it showed a quite decrease. So there might be a tendency moving towards eating more healthier food recipes. But when we were looking at recipes, we thought, why not look at the complexity of these recipes? Were they easy to make? Where did they started becoming easier or more difficult to make? But as we are looking at two different sources, one are cookbooks and one are newspapers, so we decided to have a bit of look at both. So the cookbook showed quite similar pattern of recipe complexity. So the ingredients, so we did the recipe complexity based on number of ingredients mentioned. There are multiple other ways to do, but we focused on ingredients here. So the number of ingredients in those recipes were quite often from 7 to 10 in cookbooks, but newspapers are all different together, because I think it's also that newspaper wanted to attract people. They wanted to show that, hey, look, we have something new. We have something very interesting. It's kind of similar to what we see on Instagram, those food channels trying to show us, hey, you can make this, which has a bunch load of food items in it. And similar trends we're seeing in newspapers, as I shown you the earlier example with 50 plus ingredients. Oh my God, who used to cook that? But they published it. So, after looking at these diverse things, we realized that it might be possible that they were trying to attract, but did they stray altogether from the traditional cookbook recipes? So, what we did was we looked at seasonal ingredients. So, the list that I mentioned earlier for lexicon, for the seasonal ingredient list, we checked that with newspaper data set. There they have dates when a particular recipe was published in newspaper, and when we compare, newspapers still stayed with the seasonal ingredients. They just added a lot of more ingredients to their recipes. So even though they had a varied amount of ingredients and complexity, they still stayed close to their roots. So after looking at all that, I would like to have to a conclusion. So when I looked at the research, I found that these observations show that even the small data points like a margarine or a pepper example have the capability and a possibility to point towards a bigger historical narrative. And that's what is, I think, beauty of having digital humanities research, in fact. And our study, I will say, focuses or highlights the importance of specific data sets and the quantitative methods which are necessary for these data sets, and also the need for having a tailored methodology, because this is quite specific use case. This is a very domain specific work. So there is a necessity to have much more data which is domain specific. And in future, we would love to work more on addressing different variables which are more than ingredient usage patterns, or refine extraction methodologies, and also explore the LLM possibility that we saw while doing this research. And with that, I would say thank you so much. If you want to connect or have a look at our paper or GitHub repository or our project in general, please scan this QR code. And thank you.
Thank you again. So we have some questions. Question? Okay. Can you? Okay.
Something unlimited with. Thank you. That was super interesting. I'm also very hungry now. I was curious. I mean, you kind of mentioned it at the end, but so you're saying that you selected the specific subset of recipe books, right? The ones to do with, I guess, household training. Yeah. Did you notice any patterns relating to the fact that you use that subset? I was wondering if there was like specific kind of vocabularies of words or things that emerged that was like clearly these are cookbooks for like training women to be in the household, or is that more part of the future work that you're talking about doing? If that makes sense.
Yes. Just to repeat, so you mentioned about the words that were more targeted towards women.
Yeah, maybe you look at ingredients, whether or not in the process of looking at the stuff, did you also already notice that, for example, these cookbooks had a specific way of, I don't know, like writing the recipes in the sense of how they spoke to the reader? Does that make sense?
Yes, so I did not find such a way of that. So the recipes were quite, as you can see in other cookbooks, with just title, ingredients, and basic instructions, but not recipes. The other part of it, so which were more instructional about to women that, hey, you should have a warm meal ready for your husband in the evening. So yes, there is indeed those information, but that was not the focus, so we did not, look at it. Welcome.
Questions?
Just a curiosity, really. Why did you decide to base the analysis on that time frame specifically? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. So it was purely based on the availability of data. So the cookbooks were available the earliest from 1910. There is the first edition from 1905, but it was not available in the TXT for other usable format. And for the newspaper dataset, it was already published till 1995. So.
Other questions? I have one. You mentioned the fact that you want to explore, analyze more variables, right, in the future. What kind of variables would you like to study more or to integrate in this kind of study, in this work?
So in the recipes, there are multiple processes through which the cooking was done. So it's different steps of cooking or also utensils that are used. So when we talk about recipe complexity, ingredient is just one way to see it. So if we look at a recipe with 10 ingredients, but it's just frying, it's not that complex. But 2 ingredients with 10 different cooking methods which are done, it's much more complex. So the other factors that I would like to do in future are more on the processes that were done on cooking, and also on the different types of utensils that were necessary, because here we are talking about cultural influences. So like banana leaf was example, there are cultural utensils which might not be accessible in Netherlands, which were used in Indonesia or Japan. So did they substituted those utensils, or did they made their own version like rice table, where they combined their own interpretation and the originality? So
you want to deep more in the quality and the qualitative aspects.
yes,
Okay.
but also on the so this is not exactly related to recipes, but as a food as a broad aspect.
Okay.
So here food, we are focusing more on food being eaten, but also food being processed to medicine or food being processed to gift someone.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so these are the different parts, but this is more for the recipes are quality.
And do you think you have to deal with do you think you have to deal with other data sets to do this kind of analysis, or you can rely only on the data that you already have somehow?
So for the things that I mentioned about the cooking process and utensils, expansion of this data set is necessary because this is limited to century and assorted cookbooks and newspapers. But for others like medicine and preservation or gifting, there is need for more data necessary. I'm actually working on that with two of my colleagues. So cookbooks are limited to cooking processes, whereas data about fictional books or medicinal books are necessary to have a look at other aspects too.
Okay, thank you. There another question, quick question or something? Okay, so I think we have a coffee break now. Thank you again.
Thank you.